Good morning. Committee will come to order. I'd like to begin this hearing by stating the Oversight Committee mission statement. We exist to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes for them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. We will work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. This is the mission of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. First, I'd like to take a moment to express our deepest condolences to the victims and families of the Boston Marathon attacks, and certainly what is happening at this time in West Texas. It affects all of us. You can't be human and not feel for the people that are having to deal with these things. You also can't be grateful enough to the men and women who are there and responding. They woke up one day and everything was good. They were going to go to work or enjoy a marathon or just be at home, and then all of a sudden a disaster strikes and terrorism strikes. And there are good men and women who wake up and answer that call and respond. They didn't necessarily choose or think that they were going to be in that situation, but suddenly they were. And our hearts and prayers go to them. And certainly with my colleague and ranking member, Mr. Tierney, who is obviously in the Massachusetts area today, and obviously we will miss him, but totally understand it is the right place for him to be. Senseless acts of violence and terrorism, such as what happened in the community of Boston, should never be tolerated. And the bombings are a sober reminding that the threat of terrorism has not disappeared. I want to specifically commend the TSA, including officers at the Boston Logan Airport, for their dedication in working closely with the Boston Police to heighten security and help ensure the safety of the traveling public. Their quick and immediate response in making sure that some of those facilities were secure upon for some of the departures of somebody who might be trying to escape, certainly commendable, not only in Boston but some of the smaller other regional airports as well. TSA proactively helped by asking passengers if they'd seen anything or had photos or videos of the explosion. And also, it is my understanding that TSA wisely increased security at other significant airports during a period when it is unknown whether the bombings in Boston were part of a greater plot. For that, we're very grateful to the men and women who participated in that. It's what they're there for, and we need their help and their expertise, and we appreciate it. The tragedy which occurred in Boston is very much relevant to today's proceedings, as this hearing is designed to evaluate the impact of the sequestration on TSA security operations. On March 1st of this year, the President issued a sequestration order as required by law, mandating a $3.2 billion in budget cuts for the Department of Homeland Security. Prior to and in the wake of sequester, Secretary Napolitano alarmed the public with sharp rhetoric on multiple occasions that TSA's operations would in fact be significantly impacted by the sequestration. For example, on March 4th of this year, Secretary Napolitano stated that airport lines were already, quote, 150 to 200% as long as they would normally expect, end quote, and the TSA would start sending furlough notices immediately. However, in TSA Deputy Administrator Hilinski's written testimony for today's hearing, Mr. Hilinski states that, quote, initial projected impacts on wait times are largely mitigated, end quote. This assessment seems in stark contrast with Secretary Napolitano's initial rhetoric. Now, we're almost 2 months beyond the start of sequestration, and today I'd like to learn whether TSA has furloughed any employees, and if so, how many. I'd also like to hear today if Secretary Napolitano's concerns about wait times doubling for the traveling public has proven true. Deputy Administrator Hilinski's written testimony also notes that, quote, after applying sequestration to its final enacted fiscal year 2013 appropriation, TSA's fiscal year 2013 funding level is $670 million less than fiscal year 2012, end quote. Placed in context, however, the President Obama's fiscal 2013 budget includes $7.65 billion for TSA, which includes more than $2.5 billion in fee collections. In other words, while the reduction to TSA's budget does require prudent planning, I strongly believe that TSA could be cutting unnecessary administrative costs and spending more effectively on security programs and other types of technology. For example, despite the looming budget cuts required by sequestration, TSA agreed to an eyebrow-raising $50 million contract procuring TSA uniforms. I will note, though, that I do appreciate the responsiveness from the TSA. In my short time here, I have seen a dramatic change in the responsiveness. Initially, as we sent letters and other things back to the agency, we didn't get any responses. But in the case specifically of the uniforms, we got a very thorough and a very timely response. That's new. We like that. We encourage that. We applaud it, and we note it here today. Moreover, during the 112th Congress, this subcommittee held a series of TSA oversight hearings. During these hearings, we learned that there are numerous examples of ongoing waste at the TSA. These hearings examined a range of issues, including the effectiveness, privacy issues, the health risks associated with whole-body imaging machines. We looked into the use of canines, airport perimeter security, SPOT program, TWIC, TSA procurement, deployment, and storage of airport security-related equipment. I would also note the work of the then Chairman of the Transportation Committee, Mr. Mica, who is on this panel here with us today, and thank him for his good work on the oversight of this as well. GAO believes the SPOT program, for instance, which has already cost taxpayers more than $800 million, is ineffective and recommended that Congress should consider limiting funding for the program. Likewise, committee investigators found that TSA had wasted approximately $184 million by inefficiently deploying screening equipment and technology to commercial airports. These are just a few examples of a number of potential ways for TSA to spend taxpayer funding more efficiently to account for the budget reduction without impacting security operations or increasing wait times. Today's hearing should explore potential solutions to account for the budget cuts without affecting operations. For example, instead of using whole-body imaging, TSA should be doing an analysis of whether canines would be more effective in conjunction with metal detectors and behavioral profiling and other types of efforts like that. I also invited the Customs and Border Protection today, CBP, but unfortunately they are unable to testify. Mr. Hilinski, I would like to hear your thoughts on how to lessen wait times for international travelers entering the United States, and I look forward to hearing from the Deputy Administrator about the continuing planning for sequestration, the challenge faced by the TSA, and the solutions we can reach together. I'd now like to recognize the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Spear, for her opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Hilinski, for being here. I, too, want to associate myself with the comments made by the Chair in applauding the first responders in Boston, our FBI, who was on the scene immediately, and send our condolences to the families who have lost loved ones and those who have endured excruciating pain and maiming as a result of this horrific incident. It draws into clarity why we do need to have a Homeland Security operation in TSA as well. I first want to make clear that I believe that deficit reduction should be a priority, but I am also of the opinion that spending cuts should be targeted and implemented in a strategic way. Unfortunately, Congress did not allow Federal agencies that discretion. Instead, Congress required all Federal agencies to make a hatchery of cuts to every program, activity, and program. This was supposed to be such a bad idea that it would not happen. But as a result of this dysfunction in the institution it has, and we and the public are now seeing some of the consequences. We heard on Tuesday about planned cuts to services at our national parks, our beloved Smithsonian, but at least those do not affect our national security. At TSA, sequestration was causing reductions in the number of TSA officers at the nation's airports. TSA was powerless to prevent that outcome because Congress had required the agency to impose these across-the-board cuts. So Congress took action, as only Congress can. It passed a new law that provided TSA with additional funds to partially reverse the effects of sequestration. Still, Congress has not even tried to reverse the effects of sequestration at most other Federal agencies. Today, we will hear from TSA regarding the impact of sequestration on their operations and on national security. I look forward to hearing how they have been affected by these budget cuts and its plans to try and balance administrative personnel and equipment costs going forward. One of the biggest cuts has been to TSA's information technology budget. This includes checkpoint technology, security screening equipment, and infrastructure accounts. These budget cuts have caused contracts for new IT equipment and maintenance to be deferred or reduced, leaving security equipment prone to error and threatening our citizens' safety. At the same time, I have in the past been concerned by some of TSA's technology programs and procurement efforts, including the much-discussed airport puffer machines several years ago that were purchased without any determination of whether they would work in an airport environment. I would like to hear from TSA how TSA has improved its technology procurement practices and how, in this challenging budget environment, TSA will ensure accountability and an adequate acquisition workforce to ensure proper use of TSA funds in technology development. Finally, the Federal Air Marshals, the last line of defense against those who seek to disrupt domestic flights through criminal or terrorist actions, will be cut by $49 million and are expected to remain on a hiring freeze. I look forward to hearing how this will affect the security of the traveling public and its long-term implications for the Air Marshals services. These are not speculations or scare tactics, but rather these cuts are affecting real people, and we need to have our eyes wide open to assess to what extent these cuts potentially jeopardize the safety and security of the United States. It is the responsibility of Congress to make these budget cuts more targeted and less likely to put innocent citizens in harm's way. I would like to join with the Chairman and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to start a meaningful, bipartisan negotiation to replace aspects of the sequester and to prevent these cuts from becoming something we will regret. I have recently launched the Bipartisan Congressional Watchdog Caucus with Congressman Kaufman of Colorado to create a culture of accountability for taxpayer dollars. I firmly believe that if we work together, we can be smarter in weeding out waste, be fiscally sound, and still ensure the safety of the traveling public. In light of the despicable terrorist bombings that occurred in Boston on Monday, I cannot imagine that any American citizen is remotely interested in hearing about how the dysfunction of this congressional body allowed unnecessary and preventable budget cuts to compromise their safety. I yield back.
Now recognize the Chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Speer, Mr. Cummings, my ranking member, and Mr. Mica. We've all sat through multiple hearings about the dysfunctional organization known as the TSA. Now, Ms. Speer says sequestration is to blame. If I were a Southerner and had been around animals long enough, I could say bull in a better way, but it's bull. You're here today because, in fact, you have more assets than you should possibly need. You have grown assets. You've grown bureaucracy. Your organization is constantly known as TSA, thousands standing around. And the reason is you endlessly include more and more people doing less and less. And I'm not blaming the men and women of the TSA. There's been a pattern of acquisitions of products that don't work, warehouses filled with equipment that was bought and not used, contracts that promise to do one thing and $1 billion later they don't do what they claim to do. I think the most important thing is until people going through checkpoints see the efficiency of people with blue uniforms, and by the way, I'd like those blue uniforms to be a little more cost effective the next time you buy them, they're not going to believe a word you say today. You can tell us everything you want to tell us, but the men and women on the dais here, we go through the checkpoints. We see it. We see long lines. We've seen long lines for more than a decade as your numbers have increased. We see more people right now working in the headquarters of TSA than work in the congressional, in the GAO, our accounting and investigation section. You've got practically as much overhead as all of Congress. And yes, you've made cuts in areas that could potentially endanger America because you haven't been willing to have attrition and right-sizing. You haven't encouraged alternatives to Federal employees when you could. Now, the truth is, and I think the Chairman would say he's seen it going back to Utah like I've seen it going back to California, I listen to people who are TSA employees being used to say, no water bottles, put this in there, do this, do that. The bottom line is, that does not have to be an essential function. There were essential failures on 9/11, and they were mostly what we didn't know. And each time we've had another incident, we learn something else. Your men and women, your hard-working men and women have tried to react. But between too much overhead, organizational failures, incredible staffing questions, I'm going to close with this, Mr. Chairman, and this is not a normal opening statement for a chairman. But when I see these little daises being put up so that supervisors can look over the legions of people that it takes to put somebody through a line, I can do a simple count, and every member here can. The number of people to move a person through the line is not going down, it's going up. Now, you're going to testify about how you're, woe is me, we're going to be unsafe because we got a little less dollars. Go back to your budget after 9/11, 2003, 2004, 2005. Move it up in constant dollars, and I'm terribly sorry, but by 2004, tell me that shouldn't have been your highest cost time. It's not that there are more travelers, there are less. So as you give us your testimony, bear in mind that the only people that really believe that you're doing all you can for efficiency and safety are people who have not flown. I yield back.
I thank the Chairman, and now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I had not intended to even attend this hearing, but I really didn't intend to say anything. But I want us to not be distracted. I want us to not be distracted. We have to make sure that the people that we represent are getting the best service possible. Their health, their safety, their welfare is number one. It is easy to sit back and try to quarterback the other team. Decisions have to be made at TSA, and I'm going to believe that TSA wants to do the right thing. That does not necessarily mean that I or my colleagues will agree with those decisions. But first of all, I want to make sure that those decisions are based in a culture of integrity. That's number one. Number two, I want to know that they are informed decisions. That is, that you have gathered information and your decisions are based upon information that is accurate. Number three, I want to know that the decisions were based upon and consistent with the goals of TSA. Now, we all know that sequestration has had its impact. It has had a tremendous impact. If it can have an impact on Johns Hopkins University, which is smack dab in the middle of my district, which is now having to end research on some life-saving types of research, it certainly can have an impact on TSA. What I'm interested to know is, number one, how these decisions were made. Number two, was there some room to do things differently? Number three, were they consistent with making sure that the public is safe? And certainly we all want to know that there is a balance. But safety is number one, and convenience is down the line. I don't want to sacrifice convenience for safety. So I want you to, I'm hoping that the testimony will shed some light on what I just said. Finally, let me leave you with this. In the end, the Republic is looking at us as members of Congress, and I'm sure asking, why can't you all get this right? I'm not going to sit here and blame TSA. I'm going to blame us. We are the ones who are responsible for sequestration because of our failure. Now, that does not let TSA off the hook, but we've got our own homework to do. And in the midst, and I tell my kids, I tell them that usually in bad situations, people do not so bright things. Under pressure, people do not so bright things. And so I'm hoping that while we're going through this sequestration, that we are making the very best decisions consistent with the goals that I just mentioned. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony, and I want to know what the future looks like, no matter what, assuming that this Congress does not do what it's supposed to do. I'm praying to God that we do, but assuming that we don't, assuming that there are additional cuts, I want to know what the future looks like, because that's what we've got to deal with. We cannot deal with illusions. This is reality, because we're dealing with the safety of our constituents. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your courtesy, and I yield back.
I thank the ranking member, and now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mica, for 5 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman and ranking member. First of all, let me say that Mr. Chaffetz and I and the Chairman have sat down to look at how we're going to approach improving and reforming TSA. And with this hearing, we're beginning under the jurisdiction of this Subcommittee, National Security, that process. We will continue that, and my subcommittee, Government Operations, will begin a series of hearings in May, and we will target some operations that transcend just the national security area. And you can see from the passion of the Chairman that probably at the full committee we will be taking up this matter as far as the need to reform and dramatically overhaul an agency that's spun out of control. I can tell you that it spun out of control because I helped create it. Originally, we had 16,500 screeners, private screeners under the airline's supervision. On 9/11, 2001, it wasn't that group that failed. It was the Federal Government who did not set guidelines or parameters or restrictions in place. Never, I can tell you in our wildest imagination, did we expect to balloon from 16,500 to 65,000 TSA employees. In fact, we have now grown to bigger than 7 cabinet agencies. We're spending close to $8 billion, an incredible sum of money. We have 51,000 screeners according to their website. That means you've got another 14,000 administrative staff. I see they're now cooking the latest books and trying to mislead Congress on what they spend for administration, which is approximately $1.8 billion for screening and about 1.2. They have 28% of the headquarters employees are supervisors. We're here to talk about sequestration, and as the Chairman pointed out in his opening statement, the Secretary tried to mislead the public and the Congress by saying that lines would be 150% or people would be inconvenienced by what Congress did. Now, with 51,000 screeners, they can't get the job done. I can tell you it can be done with less than half that number. We need to get them out of the screening business. They are not law enforcement officers. TSA was set up to connect the dots and also to set the standards and also to coordinate some of the effort. But what we have it now as an agency that, again, is spun out of control, we have, again, a situation where they're spending money, and we'll look at it today on things like uniforms. I'm told that our Marines are given a $400 lifetime allowance, and a few weeks before sequestration, they signed a multi-million, I think it's tens of millions of dollars for $1,000, which I guess they'd agreed to with the screener's allowance, to put that into perspective. We only have 457 airports where we have TSA's presence, and we are spending, in fact, huge amounts of money with huge amounts of personnel. If you take 3,000 to 4,000 people in Washington, administrative personnel, another 10,000 in the field, do the math of the Army that's out there in administrative staff alone, not to mention the failures in training, employment, and a whole host of areas all outlined, and I'd ask that this be put, this report that the Transportation Committee put together on the 10-year record of TSA, which is a record of failure. It was outlined by the chairman, the purchase and implementation and deployment of technology, of hiring and training, retaining personnel. It goes on and on. The different systems that have been put in place, not by my judgment, but by other evaluative agencies like GAO, the failure in a behavior detection program, never detecting a single terrorist, in fact, letting some of the known suspects get through. It's a record of failure, and it needs to stop. I look forward to working with Chairman Chaffetz, full committee chairman, ranking member, and others to do better. We can and we must. I yield back.
Without objection, we'll enter that into the record. So ordered. Does the gentleman from South Carolina care to?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Members will have 7 days to submit opening statements for the record, and we'll now recognize our first panel, and the only witness that we have here today, Mr. John Hilinski, who is the Deputy Administrator for the Transportation Security Administration. Mr. Hilinski, we appreciate your being here today. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses are sworn in before they testify. So if you please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated, and let the record reflect that the witness answered in the affirmative. Mr. Hilinski, we now recognize you for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman, distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about the impact of sequestration on the Transportation Security Administration's operations. As you know, the President's March 1 sequestration order, as mandated by law, requires across-the-board budget cuts at most Federal agencies, including $3.2 billion in cuts for the Department of Homeland Security through the end of this fiscal year. TSA is the Federal Government's lead agency for protecting our transportation systems from terrorist attacks, while ensuring the freedom of movement for people and commerce. The agency manages effective and efficient screening and security of all air passengers, baggage, and cargo on passenger planes. It also deploys Federal air marshals internationally and domestically to detect, deter, and defeat hostile acts targeting air carriers, airports, passengers, crews, and other transportation infrastructure. Each year, transportation systems protected by TSA accommodate approximately 640 million aviation passengers, 751 million passengers traveling on buses, more than 9 billion passenger trips on mass transit, nearly 800,000 daily shipments of hazardous material, more than 140,000 miles of railroad track, more than 4 million miles of public road, and nearly 2.6 million miles of pipeline. TSA functions as a critical component of those efforts with a highly dedicated workforce, working around the clock and across the globe to execute our transportation security responsibilities. Every day, we interact closely with public and private sector stakeholders in the aviation, freight rail, mass transit, passenger rail, highway, and pipeline sectors to employ an intelligence-driven, risk-based security approach across all modes of transportation. We are dedicated to preventing terrorist attacks, reducing the vulnerability of our transportation systems to terrorism, and improving the experience of the nearly 1.8 million domestic air passengers who fly each day. Throughout the planning efforts, TSA and its DHS components were careful to strike a balance, take prudent, responsible steps towards implementing across-the-board budget reductions. Our guiding principles have been as follows. 1, preserve TSA's frontline operations and other mission-critical activities to the maximum extent possible. 2, take care of our workforce by managing hiring practices, managing overtime, and through other means. While the reductions required by sequestration will continue to impact our operations, the recent passage by Congress of the fiscal year 2013 Consolidated and Further Continuing Appropriation Act provides TSA with some additional funding for transportation security officers, which, to some degree, lessens the impact on our workforce and operations. TSA will use these additional funds to maintain its security screening workforce through prudent management of hiring and controlled overtime. Although initial projected impacts on wait times are likely to be mitigated through the additional funding provided by Congress, travelers may see lines and wait times increase during the busiest travel periods or required surge operations. The Federal Air Marshal Service has had a hiring pause in place for more than a year to manage the planned program adjustment from $965.8 million in FY12 to $929.6 million in FY 2013. Congress further reduced that funding in the full FY 2013 appropriation to $906.9 million, or $858 million under sequestration, an 11.1% cut below FY 12 levels. The FAM's mission funding is dominated by personnel, travel, and related costs. TSA continues to assess the personnel actions and mission adjustments that will be necessary at this decreased budget level. Sequestration has also had impacts on TSA's information technology, checkpoint technology, security screening equipment, and infrastructure accounts, totaling a $288 million reduction from FY 2012. In light of these cuts, IT service contracts, equipment refreshment, and maintenance schedules will be deferred or reduced through the end of the fiscal year. Furthermore, security equipment technology replacement and investment plans are being adjusted to reflect the reduced budget level. Finally, TSA is taking action to establish additional controls across the agency. We have canceled previously approved training activities, conferences, and meetings that require travel. This includes management control training, field and oversight and compliance audits, operational and support program coordination planning, and preparedness training. Our nation continues to face an evolving threat to our transportation system. In the face of sequestration, TSA will continue implementing an intelligence-driven, risk-based approach to security across all transportation modes, and to do so as efficiently as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hilinski. Again, we appreciate you being here, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. How many furloughs do you anticipate, or how many have happened so far, and how many do you anticipate?
Sir, at this point, we do not anticipate any furloughs. We believe that through managed hiring practices and control of overtime, we will not have to furlough any of our personnel.
So no furloughs. Number 2 on my list here of questions, where specifically are we experiencing longer lines than pre-sequestration? I mean, you have the same personnel, right? So there's no furloughs. Where are we having longer lines?
Sir, I would tell you that I don't know that we're having longer lines across the board anywhere at the checkpoint. If we do, it could be dependent on a number of factors, weather, flight delays, things like that. I don't
So there are
think-
natural things that would happen that have nothing to do with sequestration. Would it be fair for me to say that due to sequestration, there are no longer lines?
I would say that we have not experienced any longer lines at this point, sir.
When did you start planning for sequestration?
Sir, we started planning for sequestration in 2012. It was what I would consider.
Do you know when in 2012?
I don't have that right off the top of my head, sir. I know it was in late 2012 we started looking at sequestration, the effects, and we planned almost on a daily basis. We looked at a number of factors, and what I would say, sir, is that things moved quickly. It was a bit of a moving target. Sequestration, no sequestration, CR, no CR, budget, no budget, and we continued to plan based on numbers that we got both from the House and the Senate.
What I'm trying to do is commend you for the fact that the contrast that I see here, and I want to commend you for planning in such a way that you were able to absorb a cut in the budget. Despite what Secretary Napolitano said, there are no longer lines. There are no furloughs out there. TSA is one place that we can point where the services were basically uninterrupted, and the effect to the public was minimized. And I compliment you for that. I think we can all, every once in a while, when you have growing and expanding budgets and you cut back just a little bit, you tighten your belt a little bit, you become more efficient. Sometimes that pushes you. My compliments and hats off to you. The inbound international passengers are experiencing some lines, but that has nothing to do with the TSA. Is that correct? Is that Customs and Border Patrol that is slowing those lines down?
Sir, I believe that that the Secretary clarified a couple of weeks ago when she was talking about longer wait times that it was not the TSA, that it was Customs Border Protection where they were experiencing longer wait times, sir.
So you did something that they didn't do. Obviously, you've been able to make the adjustments. No furloughs, no longer lines. I think there were an awful lot of scare tactics out there. They still continue. You still hear people say, "Oh my goodness, the world's falling down, and people are going to die, and we can't invest." But at least I think that part of the story here with the TSA is you've been able to absorb it. The public has been well served. There's still a lot of issues that we have with the TSA, but what I'm trying to get at is specific to sequestration. I think that's interesting. Can I go to and I know Mr. Mica has done a lot of work with this, particularly as the chair of the Transportation Committee. He may hit on this as well. I want to ask you about the TWIC program. This is the Transportation Worker Identification Cards. There was a GAO report back in May of 2011 that said it, quote, could cost the Federal Government and the private sector a combined total of between $694.3 million and $3.2 billion over a 10-year period. And yet, still to this day, we don't even have the scanners needed to read these cards. This and the FAA card, again, which I'm not going to hold you responsible for, that's a whole other issue. But the TWIC card, where are we at with that, and what kind of problems and challenges is that causing at security, particularly at airports?
Sir, first let me say that the TWIC program is a fee-based program, number one. Two, that the TSA portion of the TWIC program, and we work very closely with the Coast Guard and the Department on this particular program. TSA's portion of this basically can be defined in two areas. The first, I would say, is customer support at the enrollment centers. I would tell you that we have done an assessment of those particular enrollment centers based on complaints that we received. We have adjusted that. We have changed contractors, and we're having a more direct approach on that customer service approach and oversight. The second piece is more of a technical piece for TSA, sir, and that is the identification of readers, quite frankly. And we would provide a best qualified or a recommended qualified list of readers. One of the issues that we have encountered, sir, is the fact that trying to incent to look at contractors that have readers and push them forward to try to develop readers that we think will meet the requirements. We believe we're working on that. We just had an industry day last week with a variety of vendors to provide those readers, and we'd like to get that out in a very short period of time, a recommended list for the TWIC card moving forward. As I said, we work very closely with the Coast Guard on this, sir, and the Department on the TWIC program.
Well, thank you. I'd look forward to continued updates. This is a very costly endeavor and should have really been implemented much sooner. But I appreciate the update and look forward to more. We'll now recognize the ranking member here today, Ms. Spear, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Hilinski, you actually had money restored to your budget after sequestration in the CR. How much was restored to your budget?
Ma'am, I don't have that right here. The other piece that I think is important about TSA is that we also have 2-year money. Unlike many other components in DHS and many other agencies, we had 2-year money with carryover, so that helped us quite a bit where it may not have helped other components or the Department.
All right, so the Chairman's comment that, well, you didn't furlough anyone, you were able to live within sequestration, does not take into effect that, 1, you have a 2-year budget, and 2, in the CR, you had money restored to your budget that other departments did not have. Is that correct?
I would tell you, ma'am, that I'd like to go back to what I said about planning. We have planned meticulously for sequestration. We want to focus on 2 things. 1 is making sure that we accomplish our mission based on the threat. 2 is that we take care of our workforce. We have tried to avoid furloughs. We've used 2-year money. We have used money that was resubmitted to us, and that's the process we have used. We continue to plan to make sure that we can accomplish those first 2 objectives.
All right. We tend to focus on the airports as being your sole responsibility, but the truth is TSA also has the responsibility to oversee rail security and pipeline security. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right. I just wanted to make a point of that. I've had an interesting experience with TSA and their uniforms. A number of years ago, a contract was issued to a company here in the United States to make the uniforms for TSA. It was competitively bid. And once it had the contract, it realized there wasn't a requirement that the actual uniforms be made in the United States, so they closed a plant here in the United States, and they made the uniforms in Mexico. Is this the same company that you have just issued a new contract to?
I'm not sure if it's the same company, ma'am. The company that we use is a company called VF Image. A portion of the uniforms are made in Mexico. We have to comply by NAFTA as well as the U.S.-Chilean trade agreement. We are in compliance with the law in that area. About 1/3 of the uniforms that our officers have are made in the United States. The material itself is made in the United States. The company assembles the uniforms, and it's shipped back, and we're trying to comply with the NAFTA and U.S.-Chilean trade agreement, ma'am.
Well, Mr. Hilinski, we somehow get around the NAFTA rule when it comes to military uniforms being made in the United States for security purposes. I can't imagine why NAFTA applies to TSA. And if, in fact, NAFTA does apply to TSA, then I think this committee should take some steps to make sure that we are making these uniforms in the United States and not in a foreign country, whether NAFTA is involved or not. We actually closed a plant here in the United States. Jobs were lost in the United States because this company, upon getting the contract, recognized it could make them in Mexico. Now, let's move on to talk about this. This is a $50 million contract. Is this a ceiling, or is this the actual amount of money that will be spent on these uniforms?
Ma'am, it's a ceiling. It's a bridge contract. We are moving to align with the Department so that we are, the Department is the acquisition process for the uniforms in the future. It's a 2-year bridge contract. It's the ceiling. Typically, over the last couple of years, the allowance that we've spent on uniforms is between $16 and about $19 million. And I would say, ma'am, it's essential. We are a uniform service. We require uniforms to
Now, I
conduct our
understand that.
activities.
Is there a provision within this contract for you to cancel the contract?
Ma'am, I don't know that. I
Would
can
you-
get back with you on
All right. Would
yes,
you
ma'am.
please inform the committee about that? I still continue to be very disturbed that these uniforms are being made. The majority of these uniforms, based on your testimony, two-thirds of them are being made outside the United States. I mean, it's a slap in the American people's face, I think. And for all the people that are unemployed in this country even today, the fact that we're making them in Mexico is very disturbing to me. I yield back.
Thank you. Now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mica, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me continue on the uniforms. Now, what did you just say, that we are a uniformed agency? What was your term?
Yes, sir. We are a uniform service. Our personnel.
Who told you you were? Where's it written?
Sir, I'll have to go back. I believe.
Where is it written? You just said that before the committee.
Sir, I believe it is in ATSA that we are a uniform
Okay,
service.
are your personnel, your screeners, are they sworn personnel?
Sir,
Are they sworn law enforcement personnel? The answer is no. Are you? I mean, you're the deputy. You don't know where, first of all, you came up with the term that they're uniformed. Secondly, you do not know whether they're sworn. Are they sworn personnel? Are they law enforcement personnel? They are not. Come on, admit it to the committee. Yes or no? I mean, is there some problem we have here? Is there acoustical
Right.
problem? Maybe the staff should check it. Can he hear me? Can the witness hear me?
yes, sir, I can hear you.
Are they sworn personnel? They are not. Would you, is that correct?
Sir,
They are not sworn personnel. Why do we even have law enforcement personnel to supplement TSA personnel at almost every exit? Because TSA are not law enforcement officers. They're screeners. And now you're telling me they're uniformed personnel. You just heard the ranking member. What an insult. I mean, you hijack an agency like TSA. You turn it into one of the biggest bureaucracies we've ever created. I want to know the cost of changing out. You had white uniforms, didn't you, when we started for many years? Didn't we have white uniforms without a badge?
when TSA.
We had a TSA patch without a badge. How much did the badges cost? They're not sworn or they're not law enforcement. You went out and bought millions of dollars worth of badges, didn't you? And the insult, too, is they're wearing Mexican uniforms. You changed them out to blue to look like law enforcement folks. Another mirage. Have you ever looked at England and UK, for example, two areas that have experienced probably the highest levels of terrorism and bombing and terrorist incidents? Most of their employees don't even wear uniforms. Did you know that? Have you been there to both of those?
Yes, sir, I have.
Did you notice that? I was just in Israel earlier this year. I was in the UK just a while ago. Inspected the people who are there. They don't even wear them. Here, you spend $50 million. Now I'm told you committed to this every year. This is $1,000 a year, 51,000 employees. Is that true?
That's
Just before sequestration, you signed the contract, right? Were you aware that our uniformed personnel, like our Marines, get a one-time $400 lifetime allowance when you cook that deal with the unions?
sir.
Were you aware of that? Did you look at who else?
If I have an opportunity to respond, sir, I think I
Did you
can
look
answer
at
some of
who
your
else?
questions.
Well, like people, men and women who put their lives at risk in our military, what they get as an allowance? If that's going to continue, is that going to continue every year?
Sir, I spent 25 years in the Marine Corps. I know
Okay.
the Marine Corps very well.
Okay, then you
Marines
should
get an
know the
allowance
allowance.
every year,
And
sir.
I'm more offended by someone who's been in the Marines or aware of the Marines, and to give that kind of a deal. And it's going to, is this every year?
Sir, if I
1,000?
have a chance to respond, I'll
Is it
answer some of
okay,
your
is it
questions.
$1,000 a year? Simple question.
Sir, what we spend on our uniforms is not $1,000 a year. We have an initial allowance of about $371, which allows our screeners to buy 3 sets of uniforms.
To wear the Mexican uniforms.
Sir, those are uniforms. We're in compliance with the regulation. They're the uniforms that were procured through a procurement process which was the most
And I have no-
cost-effective process, sir.
Let me say, Mr. Deputy Secretary, I have no problem with collective bargaining. And I think you're screwing the screeners. When you spend $1.2 million in administration and they're getting about $1.8 or $1.9 billion, when you've got 28% of the personnel in Washington as supervisors, the average salary in Washington, D.C. for personnel is $104,000 a year, and those guys are dogging it at $38,357 on average. I have no problem with that. I see the other great things you negotiated wasn't the conduct of security and business or anything improving that. It was the size of the tie tack. Wasn't that what part of the agreement? Whether they could wear a TSA emblem on their ball caps, is that correct? Whether they could wear like a vest with a TSA emblem. Those are some of the other terms of the agreement.
Sir, I can answer your questions on the uniform if I have an opportunity to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I have a whole host of questions. I don't know if we'll get to another round, but they ignored us in the Transportation Committee for a total of 6 years. We have questions that they have not answered. I will submit to the committee all of the remaining questions, and I know you signed off and Mr. Issa signed off. They still have not responded. And I am telling you, if I have to come down there and sit in Mr. Pistol's office, we are going to get answers to those questions that are pending. They will be submitted through the committee and the chairman. And if we have another round, I have additional questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would request that Mr. Hilinski be given the opportunity to answer those questions.
We will certainly submit the questions. And Mr. Hilinski, if you'd like to take time to respond, happy to do that. And then we'll recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Cummings.
Yes, sir. On the subject of uniforms, sir, every personnel that comes into TSA takes an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. We serve the public, sir, and our job is to protect the traveling public. We take that very seriously. If we fail at our job, people die. We wear uniforms. We are a uniformed service. It doesn't mean we're a law enforcement service. We are a uniformed service. We looked at this contract because it was expiring. We went through many different planning processes. We were not going to have a contract to buy new uniforms or to replace worn and torn uniforms if we didn't sign that contract. Bad timing, sir, 17 February 2013. It wasn't Machiavellian. We weren't doing that against anybody. We want and we have to have uniforms. Bottom line, we follow an acquisition and procurement process, which means that we go for the lowest cost uniforms, sir. And quite frankly, it's a bridge contract. It's a 2-year contract. We have no intentions of hopefully not hitting anywhere near that ceiling. But it's a requirement that we have those uniforms, sir.
Thank you. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, the ranking member, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Hilinski, I'm sure you can understand the frustration. We are trying to make sure that Americans have jobs. And certainly you have your challenges because like NAFTA and the things that you've got to do in the bidding process got that. But I want to make sure that you know that we up here are trying to make sure, just like those TSA folks have their jobs, we want to make sure that other Americans have jobs too. But I do understand the dilemma. All I'm saying is that wherever American jobs can be provided, we need to do that. You got that? Are you listening, sir?
I understand, sir.
All right.
Absolutely.
Let me, I know I can imagine your frustration. I sit on the Transportation Committee also. And whenever there is a problem with regard to something getting through an airport, or somebody getting through an airport, you're damned. And at the same time, I guess TSA is trying to keep a balance. Personnel trying to figure out how many people you need at certain airports so that you can protect the public. Got that? question is, you're in a situation right now where I want to go back to something Ms. Spear asked you about. When she was asking you, did you have funds restored under the CR? You said you did you not?
We did, yes, sir.
And she asked you at least 3 times how much was restored. You don't know that answer?
I don't have that right in front of me, sir. I can get back with that answer, sir. We were given enough funds, which has helped us maintain our screening work.
I understand that. I would suggest to you that whenever you're testifying before Congress and they're going to ask you about the things that we're talking about, a logical bit of information to have is that, you got to anticipate some questions, and that's one you should have anticipated, how much money you have and what impact has that had on what you have been able to do, that is maintaining services as they are. And so you don't know that. And I would think that the 2 people sitting behind you, are they with you?
Yes, sir.
They should have been able to do a cell phone call in the meantime to let us know that. Hopefully we can find that out very shortly. But you're freezing employment, right? In other words, if somebody retires, you're not hiring anybody, or somebody quits, you're not hiring anybody, or are you?
We are hiring, sir.
You are?
Yes, sir. The way we have been able to manage this sequestration is to do it through managed hiring, managing our overtime. And what do I mean by managed hiring, sir? What I'm talking about is we understand we have a normal attrition rate per year. We look at the attrition rate. It's also very dependent on specific airports and regions in the country. What we are doing is we are hiring to a level that we believe, and it's a very high level, and in some cases it's 100%, so that we can continue to conduct the mission. It's planning, sir, and we are planning to that level, and we are hiring to that level. We are also managing overtime. We are trying to restrict overtime to only mission-critical, absolutely mission-critical periods of time. And that's the way we're dealing with sequestration, sir, through proper planning and through looking at it every single day, where attrition is.
Now let's go to managed hiring. I just got 2 more questions. Under managed hiring, there's a bottom line, is there not? In other words, there's a goal. Say, for example, you were spending $1 billion last year. Maybe you want to come down to 3/4 of $1 billion this year. I mean, do you have a goal? You follow what I'm saying?
Sir, we're looking at it from a fiscal process, but more importantly, we're looking at it from a threat perspective and also a manpower issue. So when we are looking at this, we are factoring all of those areas in there, specifically to accomplish our mission, which is to secure those airports. We are looking at the threats in those specific airports, down to specific airports.
I got that.
How many people we need to accomplish that mission, and that's how we're hiring, and what the attrition rate is in those areas. Some airports have higher attrition rates. That's why in some airports we will hire absolutely to 100%.
What I'm asking you, and the thing that you also have to calculate in there, I'm assuming, is cost, right? In other words, you're trying to get, you're not answering my question. Are you trying to get to a certain goal? You follow cost-wise?
Sir, what we are looking at is the modeling that we need to accomplish that mission. Yes, we are factoring in cost.
And so you want to reduce costs?
Yes, sir.
That's all I'm asking you.
Yes, sir. We are looking at cost. We are trying to save wherever we can, sir. And that's why we're looking at some reduced manpower models in specific airports based on what we need to accomplish that mission. So, yes, we are looking at cost. I have a financial team of analysts that look at that cost. I don't have those costs right in front of me, sir. Next time I'll be better prepared.
Thank you. Just last thing, and I think we all should be interested in this, and you should be interested in this question too. The question becomes, if you are managing overtime, does that mean that we were overspending for overtime at some point? You follow what I'm saying? I'm assuming that you're keeping safety at the same level. I'm assuming you're spending less money. But I mean, for credibility's sake, for your credibility's sake, I'm just curious. So were we overspending overtime? You follow me?
Yes, sir. No, I do not believe we weren't. When we're talking about looking at overtime, let me give you an example, sir. In an airport, to preclude periods of extended lines, things like that, we may bring on more people for a period of time. So what we are trying to do is look at where we think the threat is, where we see the highest volume of traffic, and managing that based on the expectation that we move people through the checkpoint quickly. The idea is to use a risk-based philosophy, move them through quickly, and focus on where we consider the highest threats, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've been most courteous. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I had initially intended to yield my time to you because of all the folks that I have worked with in Congress, at least in the 2 years I've been here. You have been as interested in the workings of TSA as any of my colleagues. So that was my original intent, and I think I will still do that at some point. But, Mr. Hilinski, some earlier questioning led me to want to ask you a couple of questions. Let me start by saying thank you for your service to our country. I think you told Mr. Mica that you served in the Marine Corps, and I want to thank you for your service. You also, in response to Chairman Chaffetz, he asked you some questions about some prior comments made by Secretary Napolitano. And my concern is that once credibility is impeached, it's awfully hard to get back. And credibility can be impeached either because of a prior inconsistent statement, or credibility can be impeached because of the use of hyperbole. So when you say there are going to be furloughs and there is no furlough, that to me impacts someone's credibility. So do you know the genesis or the origin of her mistaken belief that there were going to be furloughs because of sequestration?
Sir, first, I can't speak for the Secretary, but I would tell you that the entire Department was working together, looking at what was needed, what money would be available, what the impact of sequestration would be. And as I said earlier, it was a moving target, sir.
I understand that, and I understand you can't speak for her, and I'm not asking you to speak for her. I guess what I'm asking is, did she speak to you?
Sir, we worked very closely with the Department.
Did she talk to you before she made the public statement that there would be furloughs? Who gave her the false information which she then relied upon and made public proclamations?
Sir, there was a number of planning factors that continued to move throughout the year before sequestration, right after sequestration.
Well, why would the better course of discretion not be to not make any comments until you actually knew what the heck was going to happen? Why would that not be the better course? Or am I just naive?
Sir, I would tell you that we continued to plan for a number of different factors.
Did she talk to you before she made those public comments? That's actually not a complex question.
Sir, the Secretary did not talk to me, but we are working with her staff.
So the answer would be no, she did not. Do you know who she talked to before she publicly created this Mayan apocalypse scenario with long lines and furloughs?
Sir, I believe that the Secretary clarified that the long lines and furloughs, she was talking about immigration checkpoints.
But you know what? You know the beautiful thing about clarifications is if you get it right the first time, you actually don't need to clarify anything. And I guess that's what I'm asking, is why not use a little bit of discretion, gather the facts, before you go make hyperbolic, apocalyptic comments? Why is that not the better course? I mean, you agree it is, right? That way you don't have to clarify.
Sir, I'm going to go back to what I said, that there was an enormous amount of planning being done. The terrain was shifting continually.
And I want to go back to my original question, which is, isn't it the better course of discretion to not make false comments to begin with? And accordingly, you would never have to make a clarification if you actually gathered your facts before you made public pronouncements which were demonstrably false.
Sir, I'm going to once again go back to the terrain continued to shift There was planning every day. There was worst case to best case scenario and everything in between. How are we going to deal with this?
Well, let me ask you a broader question. Do you agree if the public is cynical or skeptical about pronouncements made by government, and I include myself in it, I'm a member of Congress, there's a skepticism and a cynicism. Would you not agree that we should make every effort to be credible and accurate in what we say, what the effects of something are going to be? On both sides of the aisle, everyone, regardless of political affiliation, we really ought to make an effort to be accurate with what we say. That's not a controversial comment, is it?
No, sir, and I think every day there was a different definition of what was going on, and people tried to be as accurate as they could.
Which is why you don't send out press releases every day, right? I mean, if things are changing every day, you wait until something actually is settled, and you don't send out press releases every day. That would obviate the need for clarification, in my judgment. With that, I would yield the remainder of my time to Chairman Chaffetz.
Mr. Hilinski, the difficult part, and I know you're not the Secretary, you didn't make this comment, but she was quoted, and I'll read the quote from her, "We will begin today sending out furlough notices," end quote. Now, I don't know what time of day she said that, but by the time we got to the end of the day, there were no furlough notices set out. In fact, we're here April 19th, and there were no furlough notices set out, right? So we're trying to figure out.
Yes, sir.
What changed in those few hours?
Sir, I do believe, I believe.
And who provided her that information?
Yes, sir. I believe she was not talking about TSA. I believe she was talking about other components within the department and not TSA.
Well, the beginning of the quote is, now that we are having to reduce and eliminate basic overtime for both TSA and Customs, and then she goes on. And then the story says, lines at some Transportation Security Administration checkpoints. Napolitano added that the events sponsored by Politico are already, she said, quote, 150 to 200% as long as we would normally expect, end quote. But you testified that that never happened. So the question is somebody feeding her bad information, or is she just, I mean, what is, how is there such a discrepancy? To say that lines are going to be up to 200% more, and you can't name a single one that's even a little bit more, that's what we're getting at.
The Secretary did clarify that those were immigration lines that she was talking about at certain airports.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'll now recognize the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Spear.
And I have no further questions.
I believe Mr. Mica from Florida has some additional questions, and that this will be the last set of questions, and then we will adjourn due to pending votes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The latest figures I had for TSA, I guess online, are 64,578 employees. Is that about correct, Mr. Hilinski?
Sir, I believe our approximate number right now is about 61,000 personnel, sir.
Okay. You testified today that we would not need any furloughs. Is that correct?
Sir, we are working to avoid furloughs, yes, sir.
How many screeners do you have? I think you had up 51,000 approximately.
Approximately, yes, sir.
Is that still the case?
I believe.
How many
yes, sir.
vacancies do we have? Maybe.
Our screening workforce, sir, we're hiring to a certain percentage. Roughly, we're talking about 47,000 as of today, sir.
47. So you're actually down about 4,000.
Yes, sir.
At one time, we had Congress had set a maximum of 40,000. Actually, that was when there was a higher number of passengers, I believe. So what would be the number of screeners that you could operate with without any delays, do you know?
Sir,
47, could you absorb another 5,000 cut, 10%, 4,000?
Yes, sir. Sir, first let me say that we have a layered security program.
Right.
And that layer involves many different aspects of security. We believe in the layered program. We do have, our screeners are involved in a number of different security activities because we believe a layered effect is the way for successful security.
Now, one of the layers that you have that I disagree with is the huge bureaucracy. about 9,000 to 10,000 people out in the field, and then another, well, it used to be 4,000 in Washington. I see you've done some new accounting and taken some folks off of that, so it's approximately 3,000. Administrator Pistole promised me a downsizing in the administrative overhead. Can you tell us, we're down in screeners, you just testified, from 51 to 47. Now, again, not doing the phony baloney math, what are we at in administrative personnel in Washington and in the field?
Sir, our headquarters has approximately 2,500 personnel, and that's about 4% of our
But
work.
that's, again, you took out some of the air marshal and other activities that were previously counted. Is that correct?
Sir, we have our
In your new accounting.
So we have our operations center, we have our vetting center in Annapolis Junction. Part of the headquarters personnel that you're talking about also was our international staff. All of those numbers fell under a accounting line as being part of headquarters. Actually, they're not located at headquarters.
Okay.
And the point is, sir.
But again, there's a new math, so the new counting. But what I'm trying to get at is the net number of positions that have been reduced both in Washington and D.C., if you could get that to the committee, and then out in the field. God bless the screeners. They're working. There are fewer of them. Now, another thing that I've been able to get information on is you have a national security deployment force. This is the folks that go out.
Yes, sir, we do.
Is that still operating?
Yes, sir, it is.
It's changed names, and I never get straight answers on how much it costs, because they go out and they're sent out at places where you can't hire people or you have vacancies for some personnel management reason. Is that correct?
Sir, our national deployment force is made up of screeners who normally work in the airports. When there is a threat
No,
or
but
event,
again,
they are
I'm talking
deployed.
about the people that are set out there. They're put on per diem, and they are screening because of a lack of ability to either recruit, train, or have personnel to cover those vacancies. That force is still in place. Can you get me on the committee the last 5 years of cost? Now, you changed names a couple of times when I started inquiry, because I had information that they were being put up at great substantial expense, I don't know for certain, and sent out to different places because, again, of the failure to be able to recruit, train. Are you still recruiting people in the Washington area from the top of pizza boxes?
I don't believe we are, sir.
How about discount pump advertisements to get a job at Reagan above the, are those still?
Sir,
Can you get, do you know?
Sir, we hire personnel through a variety of methods, and we vet those personnel before they get
We disclosed
into our
some
job.
of those in the past. Now, the other thing, too, is I heard, since you've been under some siege by Congress, I mean, this wasn't just a Mica attack or a partisan attack from this side of the aisle. I came actually not as well prepared as the ranking member, who got you pretty good on the uniforms. But in fact, I know that you've ramped up your PR team. I want to know every penny you've been spending on communications, advertisement, et cetera. Can you get that information? We'll give you the specific by the end of the month.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If that is a requirement, we will send you that information.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to see that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you. And Mr. Hilinski, thank you for your service. Appreciate your willingness to come testify today. And the committee now stands adjourned.
Here's the list of additional questions they're stiffing on.
Sir, appreciate it.